Okay, inshallah. Let me see. Okay, inshallah, we should be ready. Before I begin, guys, let me remind everyone, please, we need donations. Please support this website. I mean, good God, we still need $1,000 to cover these website expenses. Subhanallah, people, please. That's not one of the reasons why I'm so stressed out, because every month we got to get that $2,000 to cover these bills. And it's just ridiculous, man. I don't work anymore, so I can't take care of it like I used to. Please send in donations, guys. We are a nonprofit organization. You guys know that. So alhamdulillah, it'll help cover the programs that we use and all of that. Hold on for a second. I got everything. I want to make sure I got everything right. Okay, I think I'm ready. Oh, I know I'm not. I know. Listen, I know they're getting ready to message me. I forgot to share. I'm sorry. Hold on. They'll be texting me in a minute saying I didn't join the group. I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry. There it is. Heroines of Islam. Yeah, I'm kind of sleepy. You can tell, huh? I've been up since 9 o'clock this morning. That's early for me. So, and I've been on this, working on it, doing these videos all day. Okay, I think we're ready now. Yeah. Ina alhamdulillah wa salam wa rasulullah. Welcome to another session of our series entitled Heroines of Islam. Heroines of Islam. And we hear the stories, we listen to people speak about the companions of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We hear people mention and speak about, the female companions of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and such. Okay, but the reality is, how many of them take those stories and use their stories as a means of guiding us as to how to handle the trials in our personal lives? That's the question. That's the question. Because those companions, male and female, they're supposed to be our role models in life. Allah tells us in the Quran that they were the best for a reason. Because number one, not only they had strong belief in Allah, that's number one. Number two, because of that strong belief in Him, they were able to handle their trials better than anyone else. And there is no human being on this planet who was put through more trials than those companions, not even the Palestinians. Okay? Maybe the Palestinians learned their reserve from those companions. Perhaps we should need to learn how to have such reserve, such resilience from these companions. And I think from my series, I've put to rest, or I have proven to all of you who follow me, that there are many, many misconceptions today in 2024 There are many misconceptions about women in Islam. We're living in the days of fitan, the days of the ruwaybida, when they will take Islam and make it something secondary. The days of fatwa, where the fatwa will replace the sunnah. We're living in the days where the rights that Allah has given to his creation will be slowly stripped away by humanity. And that's what we see happening today with women in Islam. I think that from you guys participating in my series, you see that all these things that you've heard that you're supposed to be as a woman is not true. Okay? These female companions, they were visible, not invisible. In fact, not only were they visible, but they were invincible. I think maybe that's the problem. You know, we're living in the days of hip hop where we make our own words up like revert. When you're not a revert, you're a convert. We use words like polygyny when it's not polygyny, it's polygamy. Well, maybe that's what happened. They're saying is what they mean to say is the Muslim woman is supposed to be invincible, not invisible. You know, because these women were active. They were right there, be with the men, paving the way for us in Islam. Last week, I gave you the story of one of the female warriors. All these women were warriors. All these women were warriors, because if you weren't a warrior, you wouldn't have been able to survive back in those days. I've proven that. The Prophet's wives were warriors. The Arabic people in general were warriors. The Prophet's aunt Sophia was a warrior. Okay. Nusayba, that's the woman we talked about last week. Amara. Amara was a warrior. Well, the woman I'm going to talk about today was a warrior too. And you're going to find out that she was not invisible either. So these brothers that are telling you, sisters, that when you leave the house, you're not supposed to be seen. It's supposed to be as if you are a jinn. I don't know where these brothers come from. They need to go back and crawl down the hole, the sewage hole they came from. Because none of the prophets' wives were jinn. They were seen and visible. All the female companions were visible. The woman whose story I'm going to give to you today, she was so visible that they built a mosque at the spot she died at. Hello. But this is why it's important for each and every one of us to seek knowledge of this religion. You cannot depend on anyone to teach, to give you. What I mean is, a lot of you sisters are married. It's your responsibility to learn the deen. You can't sit there and think that your husband, depend on your husband to teach it to you, because all he's going to do is give you what watered down information he wants you to have, so he can continue to do whatever he's doing to you that he shouldn't be doing. You have to go out and seek the people of knowledge on your own and learn from them on your own. And there's no excuse with this technology that we have today. You can stay right there in your home and learn. Does everybody understand that? So I'm going to give you the story of another female companion who is written in the books. And by the way, she'll be one of the ones that will enter paradise without being held to account too. In fact, all these companions are. All of these companions who I've talked about are of the 70,000 that will not be judged. Okay. And they were all the first generation. These are all from the first generation of Muslims. So that means they are the best. They're stronger in their iman and their belief, their understanding and practice than any human being on this planet today. That includes your sheikh. Even your sheikh ain't got nothing over on them. Hello. So let me put the PowerPoint up on the screen, and I'm going to start off with, wait a minute. I'm going to start off with the people over here in Zoom. Well, first, let me take everything down. And don't forget, guys, to screen, what you call it? Screenshot the PowerPoint for yourselves. All right, hold on. Let's go over here to Zoom. What is this thing on the screen? Okay. Okay, inshallah, you guys can see. That's on YouTube. Oh, and my screen froze up. Hold on, let me put me back to the PowerPoint. Inshallah, everybody get to see my screen. Let me set it up here. Let me go big screen. And by the way, the pictures I use today, today I'm going to be using automated, intelligent pictures of how the houses looked back in this time period. The homes in Medina, the homes in Cuba, the homes in Syria, Damascus, how Palestine looked back in this era. So those are the pictures. I try to use pictures from the time period to help you get an idea. And today we're going to be speaking about one of the heroines of Islam. Her name is Haram bint Milhan. And she was never invisible. She was seen. Again, it's impossible for any human woman to be invisible because we are not of the unseen. We are part of this world. We are not jinn. The men would like you, sisters, to believe that you are a jinn, but you're not. You're a human being, a different species, a higher species than a jinn is. Okay? The prophet's wives were never invisible. They were right there, seen by the human eye, public. The people could hear them, see them, touch them if they touched them. Okay, so this invisible crap, I don't know where it came from, but it's not from Islam. Maybe it's from Islam, but not Islam. And so we're going to be speaking about Haram. Not only was she a good mother, a good wife, but she was like all the other women companions. She was a heroine of Islam. She was a warrior, a soldier for Allah. And let's begin her story. Haram, she came from a noble family. Her sister was the mother of Anas ibn Malik, the water boy for the prophet. So her sister, she was the aunt of Anas ibn Malik. And we're going to talk about her sister because her sister dedicated her son to service Allah. So Haram was his aunt. And she also had two brothers, and both of her brothers participated in the battles of Badr and Uhud. And this is important. Why? Because we talked about how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was one day approached by the angel Jibril alayhi salam. And Jibril asked him, "Oh Muhammad, what would you say about the men who participated and died during the battles of Badr and Uhud?" And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam answered, "They were the best of this nation. They were the best of my companions." And that's when Jabril said the same with us. The angels that fought beside your companions, we were the best of the angels. All the archangels came down. Malik, Ridwan, Israel, all of the best, Harut, Marut. Allah sent the best of the angels to fight with you. So that's why this is important, because any companion that fought and died during the battle of Badr or Uhud, they were the best. Such as Salama's first husband, Abu Salama. He was one of the best of this nation. He's the one who Abu Bakr said, after the Prophet Muhammad had died, when the people were trying to decide on who would be the caliph, Abu Bakr said, if Abu Salama were alive, I would nominate him, because he was the best of this nation. But Abu Salama is not alive. And they nominated Abu Bakr. So that's why this is important. Haram's brothers, they also fought during the battles of Badr and Uhud. So that shows how righteous a family she came from. Also, guys, she was related to Abu Talha by marriage. And you all know who he was. Who was Abu Talha? He was the companion that donated his beautiful garden to Allah, subhanallah. Also, her first husband was Amir ibn Qais ibn Zayd. And she was the mother of Qais ibn Amir ibn Qais. And of course, her first husband and her son were both eminent companions, and they were killed. So you can see that her husband and her son were the best of this nation, because they were both martyred at the Battle of Badr. And after her husband Amir was martyred during the Battle of Badr, she then married Ubaadah ibn Saamit. And you guys have heard of him. He was the general of the Muslim army before Khalid bin Walid, okay? And also, after him, he became the general of the army after, In fact, just to let y'all know, Mukhtar spoke about him. Yeah, this is Ubaadah ibn Saamit, the one that Mukhtar spoke of. He became the general of the Muslim army. Umar had assigned him to replace Khalid bin Walid. Okay, so she married him. She married Ubaadah ibn Saamit, and she had a son by him. Her son was Muhammad ibn Ubaadah ibn Saamit, who was also a righteous companion. So just so you guys know, to tie this with what you're learning from the caliphate of Abu Bakr, okay, Khalid bin Walid was the general of the Muslim army. But then when Umar became the caliph, remember, he replaced Khalid bin Walid with Ubaadah ibn Saamit. She was married to him, okay? And she was known for her generosity and her great sense of sacrifice. And her ambition, being that she was a warrior. Remember, the female babies back in these days that were allowed to live. Remember, I told you they were trained. They were trained to fight, because back in those days, a woman became nothing but a casualty of war. If a woman could not defend herself, she'd end up someone's slave, someone's prostitute, someone's bed mate. So all the women back in this era, even with the Vikings and Romans, were trained to fight, because if you didn't know how to fight, or you didn't know how to use poison, either you wouldn't make it in this world, because this was not a world for women back then. But anyway, This woman was trained like all the other female companions, and her ambition was to die in the way of Allah. She wanted to be a martyr. You know, her family all died in the way of Allah. Her husband, her first husband, her oldest son, her brothers. She wanted to martyrdom just like they had. That was always her ambition. And this is why she participated on that battlefield. She went out to battle. And she lived on the outskirts of Medina in the town of Kuba. And remember when Mukhtar did his story this past Sunday, he talked about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's migration from Mecca to Medina. He talked about how before the Prophet arrived in Medina, he stopped in the small town of Kuba. That's where he met her, Haram, and her family, because that's where they lived. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stopped in Kuba to rest. And when he stopped in Kuba to rest, she was amongst the first of the Ansar women to not only accept Islam, but to also announce it. And this is a picture of how the houses looked back in the time of the Prophet. This is how, and this is probably the type of house that she lived in, because she was came from a wealthy family, her and her sister, and they had a beautiful home. The Prophet loved her house, and he would visit her home a lot. Okay. Haram was a very intelligent, balanced, God-fearing woman. She held a very high position amongst the Ansar. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would come to her home and rest whenever he went to Kuba. And every time he would come to visit, she would be so happy, her and her sister. I'm going to do her sister story next week. Her and her sister would be so happy to have him visit. And they would always prepare food for him. And then he would lay down and take a nap. Okay. Anas ibn Malik, who was Haram's nephew, he tells us that once he was at home when the Prophet came, and his mother and his aunt were also there. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had brought them a beautiful gift, and he gave them a beautiful gift, and then he would always lead them in a special prayer. And as you can see, he was never alone with these women. These two sisters lived together, and I want to emphasize this because a lot of Muslims will ask the question, why did the Prophet stay, with these two women? Because they were two women and a boy. He wasn't alone with a woman that wasn't by himself. Islam forbids a man from being alone with a woman. It was two women and a son. So I want you guys to know that. It was always, he would visit and check on these two women. I'm going to tell you why he would check on them. But and whenever he went to Kuba, he would stop by their home to check on them and rest. And they would always cook food for him. He'd take a nap, and then he'd get up and lead him in prayer and leave. Okay? And he would always make dua, asking Allah to bless that whole family, to bless them in this world and the hereafter. And I'm going to tell you why. Why? Well, first of all, Haram, after the Battle of Badr, she married Ubaadah ibn Saamit. And I just want to let you guys know, when she married Ubaadah ibn Saamit, he was a good husband, a good father. He treated her son, Abdullah ibn Amir, as if he were his own. And by the way, as you guys can see, when he went to visit these women, again, they had children there too. You had Anas, you had her son Amir. So the prophet was never in a house alone with one of these women. There was always other people there. So I want to specify that. And also, guys, a little bit of information about Ubaadah. You know, he was the general of the army, but he was also one of the first of the Ansar to take the pledge of Aqaba. When Mukhtar talked about the pledge of Aqaba, Ubaadah was there. He was one of the leaders of his clan, and he also took part in the Battle of Badr. So this woman married 2 eminent companions. Also, Ubaadah was one of the heroes that fought with Abu Bakr during the apostasy wars. He fought under Khalid bin Walid's reign. And he later died during the Battle of Yarmouk, okay? Also, her husband Ubaadah was the first teacher and judge in Palestine. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But I threw that in there because you guys heard Dr. Jamali the other day. When Dr. Jamali spoke about how during the caliphate of Umar, that's when the Muslims were in control of Palestine. Well, Ubaadah was one of the judges in Palestine. This was a position that Umar had given him. And also Ubaadah was a part of the conquest of Egypt. And he also took part in the war to conquer Cyprus. And I just want you guys to know, his wife, when he married Haram, she participated in every battle. Everywhere Ubaadah went, she went to. She was at every battle with her husband, Ubaadah, just to let you guys know. All right. But anyway, before I get into her participation in battle, I want to give you a brief glimpse into her personality and her role around the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, her family was the family house of Milhan in Cuba. And this is probably what it looked like. I went on the internet and generated this picture. Okay. This is Cuba back in that time period. And from the description that we have of her home, they lived amongst date palm trees and plantations, and they had springs of water and pleasant breezes. So this is probably how her home looked. Being rich, she probably had an oasis right in front of it, like this, palm trees. So I tried to generate how that her house looked. The Prophet loved her home. And when the Prophet arrived in Cuba from Mecca, the people were competing with one another as to who would host him. He spent some days in the home of the tribe of Amir ibn Auf. Okay. And then also he ended up visiting the Milhan sisters. Everybody understand that? And every time he would go to Cuba for any type of business, he would visit the Milhan sisters. And I'm going to tell you why, he did that. But this is how their home probably looked. Surrounded by date palm trees. They had an oasis in front of it. That's probably how it looked. And this is another front view of what I put here to how it probably looked. Now, the Milhan house. This was the house of Haram and her sister Sulaim. And the reason the Prophet would always visit and check on them, he was asked that question. One of the people asked him, why is it, O Prophet of Allah, that whenever you go to Cuba, you always visit the Milhan sisters? He told them the reason being was because their brother was killed fighting for me. He said, and since their brother died fighting for me, He said, I feel a sense of obligation to check on them because he loved his sisters. Now, remember, I told you guys, the women that were trained, they were trained to fight, and they always had a spar partner. Well, their brothers were their spar partner. So that's how close they were. Their brother, his name was Haram bint Milhan. Haram bint Milhan. He was among the delegates of reciters that was treacherously killed by Amr ibn al-Tufail on the day of Bir Mauna. We talked about that with the kids in my Seerah class, when the prophet sent some reciters to teach the people the Quran. Well, Haram's brother was one of them. There were 70 of them sent, and all 70 of them were killed. And they were the greatest companions of the prophet in terms of knowledge of the Quran, understanding of it, and also righteousness. And their murder caused the prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a lot of sadness. So this is why he would visit these two sisters, because he knew how close their beloved brother was to them. And he felt it a duty to check on them, to make sure that everything was fine with them. So that's why, you know, he went to their house a lot whenever he went to Cuba. All right. So that's why. And that's a picture of how the house probably looked, you know, with the date palm trees. So during one of the Prophet Muhammad's visits, Haram had cooked some food for him and then went to a section of her home. After he ate, he went to a section of the home and laid down on the couch to take a nap. And he had only slept for a short time. Then he woke up smiling. And Haram asked him, she said, what are you smiling for? He said, I had a dream. He said, I had a dream that some people amongst my followers would be riding over the green sea, and they looked like kings riding on thrones. And Haram said, O Prophet of Allah, please make dua and ask Allah that I be one of those people. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I don't have to make dua asking that. He said, because you will be amongst them. Subhanallah. And after this, many years passed. And Haram would sit around waiting because everybody knew she wanted martyrdom. So here the prophet had told her that she would go with this group of his followers over the green sea to conquer, to fight, and be martyred. So she wanted this. This is something that she always wanted. And as the years went by, she just waited. It never happened, but she waited, okay, for it to happen. And again, every battle that her husband, Ubaadah, fought, he took her with him. And when her husband joined the Syrian army, okay, under the command of Abu Ubaidah and Ibn Abdullah ibn al-Jarrah, her husband took part in all the battles fought then until the Muslims conquered the entire Syrian territories. Back then, Syria was part of Mesopotamia, the Roman Empire. This is when the Muslims defeated the Roman Empire. Well, Haram was a part of that. She was on the battlefield just like Umar, fighting in the way of Islam. And it was during the caliphate of Umar when Umar requested that Ubaadah, her husband, go to the people of Palestine because they needed a scholar to teach them the matters of the religion and who could judge between them. Because as always, they always had arguments going on over there. That part of the world is always arguing, always fighting. So to demonstrate his confidence in her husband, Umar appointed him to be the teacher and judge for the Palestinians, because they were always fighting and arguing over stuff even back then. So Ubaadah and his wife Haram, they left Cuba and they began to live in Palestine. Ubaadah discharged his duties to the best of his ability. He became very popular with the Palestinians. They loved him. He became a very well-respected Sahabi. The people respected his views and they respected his decision-making. And by the way, this is a picture of how Palestine looked back in that century. This is one of the street corners, of how it possibly looked. Okay. Throughout this time, Haram remained a good, righteous wife to her husband. She was never moved by her husband's position, meaning that she never became a victim of the life of this world. Instead, she remained confident and God-fearing. She participated in every battle the Muslims had. Okay, so she never became arrogant. But she never forgot the dream that the prophet had about her being one of the people to ride over the green sea, fighting in the way of Allah, holding the banner of Islam. And she would oftentimes be seen daydreaming. And if she would tell the people, what the prophet had told her when they would ask her, what was she thinking? One day, Amir ibn al-As, he left Palestine to go and conquer Egypt because the Romans had become a threat to the Muslims in Syria. And he consulted with Umar and asked Umar if he could leave and go to Egypt. And so Amir ibn al-As went into the land of Egypt and he fought the Roman army and defeated them. And when he got to the Babylon fortress in old Egypt, he sieged it. And that's when the Muslims conquered Egypt. And this is a picture of the Babylon fortress in old Egypt. This was the fortress the Romans had. Okay, back then. The Muslims took control over it. And then Amir ibn al-As requested Umar to send him reinforcements so that they could keep that fortress. And that's when Umar sent Ubaadah. He sent Haram's husband Ubaadah, to help, keep control of Egypt. And Haram went with her husband and she participated in this battle. Okay. After this, the Romans were defeated and driven out of Egypt. And after the victory, Ubaadah was sent to Damascus, which is in Syria. And again, his wife, Haram, accompanied him, and they began to live in Syria. Okay. At this point, Muawiyah was the governor of Syria. And he became worried about the bays of Damascus because the Romans kept attacking the bay. Muawiyah knew that Cyprus Island was the marine station where the Romans' ships were attacking from. So he sent a message to Umar, asking Umar for permission to launch an attack to Cyprus to stop the Romans from attacking them from that area. But Umar was afraid of the ocean, guys. Umar, our big tough Umar, he had one fear. He feared the sea. And he didn't want any Muslims to go across the sea. because he said that he did not want any Muslims to have to die in the sea, in the ocean. So Umar was afraid of that ocean. He wasn't going to deal with that. So it wasn't until Uthman became the caliph, Muawiyah made the request. And being that he was and Uthman were cousins, they were first cousins, Uthman agreed. Uthman agreed for Muawiyah to go and, lead a attack against Cyprus. But he told Muawiyah, don't force anybody to go. Ask the people to volunteer, because that's going to be a big journey through that ocean. And so Muawiyah was shocked, though, because when he called out to the people and made the announcement for jihad, they volunteered like crazy. And of course, Ubaadah and Haram volunteered as well. And this is a picture as to how Damascus looked back in those days. Okay. So Ubaadah and his wife, Haram, volunteered to also be a part of the attack against Cyprus. And all the companions left their homes. They left the mosque and bade farewell to their families. And they gathered the flag of Islam and were happy to go and spread Islam through Cyprus. And throughout the journey there, Haram was very happy, because she kept thinking about that dream that the prophet said. She said the prophet said that there would be many of us riding the green sea like kings. She said this is what he was speaking about. This is what he was speaking about. So she was very, very happy, because here she was standing at the edge of the ship, her eyes full of tears, and she kept whispering to herself, you spoke the truth, O messenger of Allah. You finally, your dream has come true. You've spoken the truth. So the ships were detached from the anchors, and they sailed across the ocean in the name of Allah, just like kings on a throne. And Haram was very happy, and she would sometimes see herself as if she were in a high place looking down at the bottom of a mountain. And sometimes she would see the waves rising high above her, and all she kept saying was, you spoke the truth, O Prophet of Allah. You spoke the truth. Finally, the ships arrived at Cyprus. The soldiers got off their ships, unloaded their luggage, and prepared themselves for jihad. And the sad thing was, after her journey by sea, Haram got off the ship and she went to load herself up on a mule. But unfortunately, the mule became frightened by something. Some people say maybe a snake, but the mule saw something that scared it, and she fell off the mule, and she sustained a serious neck injury, and she died from it. And they buried her right where she fell. So thus the prophet's dream came true. She was the first to die in this land for the sake of Allah. She fell right from her mule right after getting off the ship. Okay? And to this day, guys, they built a mosque, and this is a picture of the mosque from today. Haram, the martyred woman, she still is there in the land of Cyprus. There is a mosque testifying that she really was the first to die there, and that indeed the prophet spoke the truth. And that's a picture of Masjid Haram. See, this is the ocean, the sea. She had just got off her boat, got on a mule, and the mule caused her to fall, breaking her neck. And they built a mosque right there where she died. And that's the story, guys, of Haram. From Allah do we come, and unto Allah we shall return. Now you tell me, does that sound like Muslim women being invisible? She was right there in every battle with her husband, right there, fell off a mule. The women were not invisible. They were right there with the men. What has happened to our nation today? Why is it that men can't give women the respect that men were giving them back then? All right, I'm going to stop right here. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Are there any questions about Haram? And by the way, her name is going to come up again when I do the story of a couple of other companions, female companions. We're going to go into detail how they were fighting, and you will hear her name again. Haram was how she was right there with her sword, taking care of the business. She was a good warrior, just like Milhan, just like Sophia, the aunt of the prophet. All these women were, just like Salama, just like Maymuna. Like I said, the women that were not killed as babies, they were trained. They were trained to fight. And if they couldn't fight, they were trained with poison. That's why they carried poison on them. So if they were taken as a concubine, while the man thought he was getting ready to do something, they pour something in his drink and have him drink it. And he died. So they can get the heck up out of there. All right. Okay. Any questions?
I had a question. Yes. Wasn't really a question, but Haram, I thought that was Carla, because I remember you said that when she got off this, so I had got confused different in my head.
No, Carla.
Did she die like that too?
No. Carla is long after this. No. Carla was not one of the originals. She was a second generation. No. Carla's different. Carla was a warrior too. I'm going to do her story later too. But you will hear Haram in her story a little bit too. You know. But no, Carla's totally different. She's with the Dark Knight. Like I said, a lot of these women, but there was another woman named Carla. I know what you're talking about. A lot of these names, there's a lot of Zainabs, a lot of Carlas, a lot, the only odd name was Layla. Now Layla's a popular name, but Layla wasn't popular back then. But that's why they all use their kunyas, because Bera was very common, But no, this ain't the Carla I'm talking. No, the Carla warrior is what she was, the sister of the Black Knight with Khalid bin Walid. I haven't done her yet, and she was someone totally. She didn't get married. She was someone different.
Yeah, because I remember you going over her story before, and that's why I thought her name was until you just said it. Okay.
Yeah, somebody different. No, this is Haram. But her sister, you might be thinking about her sister, Sulaim. I'm going to do her sister tomorrow, inshallah. Wednesday, inshallah. All right, any questions? Any other questions or comments? And by the way, guys, please donate to support this dawah effort. We're desperately in need of money to pay for our website expenses. You can scan that QR code or whatnot, inshallah. Please support us. And I want to also remind everybody, don't forget this Friday. This Friday, we're going to have a special Q&A. I'm going to have Sheikh Morsi with us. This is it. Let me show.
Assalamu alaikum. This Friday for the Access to Layla live show, we have a very special guest from Ulama Sheikh Morsi, who will be here alongside Ustada lailanasheeba to answer your burning questions on Islam. Please join us. Call in at 862-350-2838 right here on Sunnah Followers.
Yeah, inshallah, that'll be this Friday. So Make sure y'all get any questions that you want Sheikh Morsi to answer, a real scholar. You know, you can write him down and have him, and he'll be here, inshallah, to answer your questions. And don't forget February 2nd, because February 2nd, we're going to have a special Q&A too, but we're going to be talking about social media and how it's destroying this nation. So a lot of stuff to look forward to, inshallah. Yeah, any other questions?
So is the Masjid al-Haram named after her?
Yeah, that's why it's her name. Yeah, they built the mosque right where she died. Yes, and they named it after her. It's called Masjid al-Haram. That's her name. Yeah, it's right there in Cyprus.
How old was she?
You know, I don't know, because she wasn't no old woman, because she was fighting in the battles. They didn't live to be long back in them days, because, you know, this was the dark ages. But she wasn't no old woman, because she had she was still fighting. And no, I don't know. I don't know her. It doesn't mention her age. I don't know. You know, but she didn't die from old age. She died from that mule, just like the prophet said.
She fell.
And
hurt her neck.
It broke her neck, they say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was she? Was it two? I know she had two husbands previously.
Yeah.
And then she remarried?
She was married to Ubaadah. Her husband Ubaadah was with her. He was the general of the army.
Oh.
Yeah, this was after Umar had fired Khalid bin Walid, and he appointed her husband as the general of the Muslim army. And she used to fight in every battle with them. Just like whenever the prophet would fight, Salama. I told y'all, Salama was right there at every battle too with the prophet. All these women were warriors. Then none of them were not, you know, because they had to know how to fight. Otherwise, they would have been somebody's prostitute. These were terrible times. Yeah. Yeah, she was married to
very interesting.
Yeah, she was married to Ubaadah ibn Saamit when she died. She was his wife. Yeah. And they say she was very beautiful too, her and her sister. Her sister is the one that took the hair of the prophet. When the prophet came over their house, Haram would cook the food, and when he was sleeping, her sister cut a piece of his hair, and they got that piece of hair in a jar to this day. That was her sister. Her sister was, and it was the one that would catch his sweat when he would sleep. She would take the sweat off of him because everything was miracles of him, and she kept his hair. That was her sister. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, guys. Well, inshallah, tomorrow is Tuesday. And tomorrow we have the 6 o'clock class. Make sure you guys continue reading with that. I'll post the pages up. And then we have the hadith class at 9 for tomorrow. So make sure everybody is here for those two classes. You know, I'm going to log out for right now. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Astaghfiruka wa atubu.